Okay. So, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon and welcome to this wonderful session. I hope it's going to be a wonderful session at the Lahore Literature Festival, looking back at 25 years of a film called Salaam Bombay. Yes. I don't have to tell you who this person is. She's the reason you're here. I have to begin by saying that my mother and father sometimes had questionable parenting practices. At the age of 6, I was allowed to watch Psycho. At the age of 8, I was allowed to watch The Shining. And so I was scarred for life, basically. But now looking back, I'm grateful for these lapses because that meant that at perhaps not a completely appropriate age, I got to watch Salaam Bombay in Bombay at a special screening that Mira Nair had arranged especially for my mother. And I was obviously kind of awestruck and dumbstruck, and again, but in a very nice way, in a much nicer way, I was scarred for life. So I'd like to first of all welcome Mira Nair to Lahore and to LLF. Yes, is that working? Yeah. So in this session, we're just going to be sharing some memories and stories about the making of the film and what impact it had on your life and on cinema in general. I'd just like to begin by asking now, as I said, it's been 25 years. When you look back, what place does that film hold in your heart?
Well, before I start, I just want to say that really coming to Lahore is like coming home. And I'm so happy to be here. I've been here, this is my 4th time. And it started a great love affair when I was invited here in 2004 by Ali Sethi and the Friday Times. And it kind of changed my life because it was coming, in a sense, full circle because my father was educated at government college and, very much carried Lahore with him. And that's what made me make the last film that I made, which had me come here many, many times. So it's wonderful to be back and wonderful to not be working terribly hard and having a lot of fun in Lahore. And thank you so much for the warm embrace and to be here. And also thank you for thinking of Salaam Bombay, which celebrates its 25th year this year. And kill the phones, please.
Yes, please strangle them now. Thank you.
Well, Salaam Bombay was made, it's my first feature film. I came from a tradition of making documentary film. I had never studied fiction film. I made a film, I came from the theater. I was in Delhi as an amateur actress and had a very long and very passionate stint with political street theater in which I worked with a radical playwright in Bengal called Badal Sarkar, who just passed away last year. And he taught us to bring people together to discuss themes that were important to us and in the discussion create a screenplay, create a play, much like the filmmaker Mike Lee does in his cinema. And we would make plays on political apathy and take them out in the streets and perform them. And that was my initiation into the idea or the question whether can theater, can performance, can art change the world in any way at all. So the fire that led me to becoming a documentary filmmaker in 1979 was that question. And I made 5 films, documentary films, for the 7 years after I left college, and this was 1979 to 1985, and in those days documentaries were hardly ever seen, and especially in India there was just documentaries on how much coal the government made, or really dreadful, soporific, when you want to go to sleep, go see a documentary, that type of thing, and so. between and I was anxious and wanted a greater audience for my films, and therefore thought of Salaam Bombay as a fiction film, as a feature film, even though it was going to always be with real street kids, with real people, not really actors playing themselves, because I knew how to work with actors, but the inspiration came from street kids. The first inspiration of Salaam Bombay came from a documentary I made in 1984 called India Cabaret, which was about strippers in a nightclub in Ghatkopar outside Bombay, and I lived with these two strippers. My family kind of disowned me for those few months, and I lived in a place called Antofi, they used to call it, and only years later I understood it was Antop Hill, Antofi. And in Antofi, we would come home after the cabaret club about 2, 3 in the morning. Everyone in the neighborhood thought I was also a stripper, and we would go to bed and on the floor, and at about noon the dancers would wake up, and a little boy, a chai pao, would be there with little scalding cups of tea in his tea crate, enter, and from the floor they would say nacho, you know. Just like they had been told the night before, nacho, gao. And this poor kid knew only one line, and he would sing it tunelessly every day, and while he would give us tea, and it was, I am our days go, da, den, 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 I am our days go, like that. So this would happen day after day, and if you see India Cabaret, you will see the scene, because I filmed it one day. Anyway, the kids, there were so many kids, obviously, around, and the kids were just extraordinary, because regardless of having absolutely nothing, they had this great sense of panache and flamboyance and life. And I was inspired by that. And when we showed India Cabaret in a festival in India, the International Film Festival, it was opening night, and it was in Hyderabad, and about 1,500 people. It was really booked. And in those days, well, even now, it's a terribly repressed country, so anything to India Cabaret means sex, so they all came, like 3,000 people, and thinking it was going to be something quite different from what it was. But what was interesting being in that audience was that the film was made in the actual Boli that we speak in, especially the patois of Bombay, which is a mishmash. People come to Bombay, like in Karachi, from everywhere. So the slang is fantastic, you know, and this was the girls and everyone in the film were speaking that fantastic sense of humor and bawdiness, and that language went down really beautifully with the audience, because Indian cinema then, and more or less even now, but then, was very stylized. You know, the dialogue baji was very much dialogue baji. It was not how you and I speak. So that gave me a lot of courage, that if that language can work with the people, then I should be making a film in that way, you know. And so my friend from college, Sunita Arapurwala, a wonderful photographer, had never written a screenplay. She's from Bombay, I'm from Delhi, and we both went back to Bombay and met a gang of street kids who were living on her block, and basically followed them. They ran, they thought we were detectives, to take them to the chiller room. Anyway, they later befriended us, and we did everything they did for about 4 months. We went to their jobs, we went rag picking, we did what they allowed us to be involved with, and then we went off and made our own screenplay, which was a version of real life and our own imaginations, and then came back to having a workshop with street kids, just like Badalda used to teach us. And we had a workshop for about 7 weeks with 129 street kids who then...
What would you do in those workshops?
In the workshop was run by one of my very important theatre directors from Delhi called Barry John, an Englishman who'd made India his home. And Barry is fantastic with kids. And we would, I understood that the kids made 25 rupees a day those days, rag picking. So we had this job chit, which if you had, you'd make 50 bucks a day, but you had to come at 9 a.m. to a basement of a church that we rented until 6 p.m. And we were like, they had names for all of us, and I was Kasku Didi, which means, tough sister. And it was not run like a charity. It was not at all about that. This is a job, this is you have to take it seriously. And if you were late, actually we fined them. But they were never late because they were so interested in what was going on. Basically, we started with yoga, we started with dance, and the kids could pick what they wanted to dance to, and unfortunately it was pretty much always Madonna, and so Madonna was a big deal. And then we, after sort of physical workout, we would then start. I showed them a number of films. It was like Charlie Chaplin or even Truffaut's 400 Blows, films that they would not ordinarily see, because like everyone else, we're a movie-hungry nation, and they were all about the movies, and slowly they began to understand that acting as they knew it was a bad word in our workshop. We wanted something completely natural and real, and then we started having improvisations, for are the chiller rooms important to them? For instance, chiller room is slang for children's room, which is the government's remand homes where they take these kids and leave them there, and so on. So these debates, all this sort of work that we did, would always impact our own screenplay. So Suni was always there like a dramaturg, writing down lines. I would tell her, that was good, that was good, whatever. We would write down, enhance our own script. And then about the 4th week into the workshop, we brought our script into it and divided the kids into groups, and they actually started rehearsing the screenplay, and then they would turn around and say, Didi, hum ye nahi bol sakta, ye aise likho, aise karo, wo karo. They would always improve the what we were doing, always. And then there were 3 actors in these were all non-actors, and we had Anita Kambar, who's this brilliant actress from Bunyad. There was a fantastic serial at that time. She played Rekha, the prostitute. There was Nana Patekar playing his first role as Baba the pimp.
The role you first offered to Nasiruddin Shah.
I know, yes. I have wanted to work with Nasir since I was a 17-year-old girl. I watched him in Zoo Story in Delhi, and really we hoped and prayed, and we showed him the script, and he was very kind, but he said, I'll look at it. And then I remember when he called me up and said, Mira, I can't do this because I just don't like him, he said. And it just broke my heart. It was one of the many, many heartbreaks that I was to have in my life. And but Nasir, in his incredible wisdom, by rejecting me, gave me the way to look at various other people. And I went to Marathi theatre, and Marathi theatre is a very vibrant theatre in Bombay, still is. And saw this longest running play called Purush, in which Nana Patekar was, and he's just such an amazing actor, and I knew it was him, right? And he was he's much more authentically Baba than Nasir is. Nasir would have to play it, and Nana was kind of it. And then Chilam, Raghuveer Yadav, was his second film. So he came and he used to live with, I rented an empty flat, and it was just me and whoever did not find a room for the night. So the kids, they were always on the street, but in case there was a trouble, they could know they could come to my place. And
I remember reading somewhere that you said that both Anita Kamal and Raghuveer Yadav were just completely the opposite of the character that they played.
Yeah, Raghuveer is a monk. He never drank, he never smoked, and he had to play a full-blown crack addict. And I wasn't so good at that either at those days. But we found people to help us. But we really had to. And even the patois, even the Bombay bhasha and all it. He's just a completely different guy. And Anita is absolutely shy wallflower, but that's the beauty of performers, is that you just, if they're the real thing, and they are the real thing, it's just like a freedom, it's an unlocking, and she became this absolute dynamo. But it is also I went to the National School of Drama, which is our drama school, to look at young people who could or may not, could be kids. And I found this very intense, heavy-eyed young man, and I was quite riveted by him, and I asked him to talk to me, and I asked him to leave school for this movie, and that was Irfan Khan. And he left school for me, and he came
one scene.
No, he didn't know it was one scene. Now you're giving the story away. But he came and he lived with us for 4 months, and he was part of the workshop. And when you're in the workshop, you don't go with a prescribed notion of who's going to play what, and the workshop will reveal that. And he was so amazing that I cast him as Salim. But by the time I cast the other 4 kids, he was like a full 3 feet taller than them, and they are undernourished children, and they are always going to reach to like sort of his waist. And just in a group, it didn't work. Physical grouping, it didn't work. And this was about a gang of kids, so it doesn't work just visually. And it was breaking my heart, but I had to uncast him, you know, the only scene he could play, and it's his first scene in the movies, is the wonderful scene where he plays a scribe who Chaipa goes to write the letter home, and then Chaipa doesn't know the address. He says, "वो नदी के किनारे बिस्मिल्लाहपुर का गांव है, वहाँ दीजिए," and he takes his money and throws the letter away. And ever since then, I've looked for a role for Irfan, and the namesake, you know, there was nowhere. I just made a call to Irfan and I said, it's taken me 15 years, but I finally owe you this. And he became Ashok Ganguly, which was kind of the beginning of his international career. So I think I've paid back my dues there. Yeah, so I kept the actors away, except for Chilam and Irfan. I kept the Nana and Baba away from the workshop because I wanted to keep that distance for the kids, that this was Nana and, you know, this was Baba, and keep that kind of distance from him. You know, and finally we took them in with a video camera and subjected them to lights and all kinds of those pressures that happen in movies, and then saw who reacted to what. And it was very clear from the beginning that Shafiq Syed would play Chai Pao, and all of the kids. And we began the workshop with 24 kids, and we ended it with 19 kids, and all 19 are in the film. And the thing that makes me really pleased about this film, many things, but one of them is that, you know, it was about whether we can change the world. And with the profits of the film, we created Salaam Balak Trust, which is now also celebrated its 25th year. And this is an organization, we have close to 17 centers for street kids, mostly in Delhi, but also in Bombay. And we have directly impacted government policy, and it's 5,000 kids a year through Salaam Balak. And there's a book out that commemorates the 25th year, and that's remarkable, you know, what our kids who are now grown people are doing in life, not just the kids in the movie, but also the kids that have come through the trust.
All from a film that just came out of It's a film which is set in Bombay, it's about Bombay, but it's not a Bombay film, it's not Bollywood.
No.
How did you put money together? I can't imagine how that would be done over here if a film like that were to be made.
Well, I tell people, you know, you should lie, you should scam, you should bullshit, you should do whatever you have to do to get the work done. And that's how I did it, which is all true. Well, I had this India Cabaret, which was bought by some television companies like Channel 4 and so on. And I went to those same companies and said, I want to make this my first feature. And the only one that bought it was Channel 4 and in England. And they gave me a matching grant, which is that I had to raise 51% to get their 49%. And the other thing I wanted to do was not to apologize for the cinema. It was 1980 something, and you know, third world cinema had a terrible look and a terrible name, and it was just painfully bad technically, and it just doesn't stand up to anything, and I didn't want to do that at all. So I wanted to make this film in 35mm and wanted to shoot the kids like they were, you know, Ava Gardner or whoever it was at the time. And I was thinking of Ava Gardner because of Bhavani Junction, and I went to Felletti's today, and she was supposed to have stayed there. And so I asked a friend of mine to budget this, and it was like $860,000 for the whole film. And I just actually started weeping when I thought that, because how would I raise that kind of money? But when Channel 4 gave me this 50-50 thing, I tried to raise, you know, $400,000, and I went to the National Film Development Corporation in India, and they had never quite seen a film like this, and they made me really do a long song and dance, but essentially gave me $150,000 at the end of it. I'll never forget the head of NFDC was a woman called Malati Tambe Vaidya. We used to call her MTV, and she used to wear chiffons and diamonds and wedges in 19-something, and she would like float into our workshop and just think that she was unclean, just, you know, smelling the same air as the children. So definitely not a taker of Salaam Bombay, but somehow gave us $150. And I told Channel 4 that I had 300. I lied to them, and I told one person in Channel 4 that I was lying, and he said, don't worry, I'll manage. But so basically I said I had 300, so they gave me 300 and I had 150, so I had 450 and not 800. And so the problem problem was that we had to shoot the climax of the film. We had to shoot in Ganpati, which is like millions of people come out in the streets of Bombay and they hold Ganesh's statue. They're putting him in the river, in the ocean, and that was the climax where Chaipa loses Rekha, and a huge scene. And we had to film that and it was a small crew. So if we started with filming that, we had to keep filming. So that was my deadline, and it was an unmovable deadline. And basically I decided with 450 I would just blow the whole wad, not keep it for post-production, but really spend it on the movie.
That was your first day of shooting?
That was the first day of shooting. Yeah, first day of shooting.
Actors and your camera crew.
Well, by that time, you see, Mira, by that time, our actors were incredibly disciplined. They really knew what to do. In fact, our children are so extraordinary in understanding, say, continuity, because you do one thing one day and another thing the other day. They were so tuned to not acting, to being real, to not being nakhrabaji. They were so finely tuned. And so intelligent that in fact day players from Bollywood would come, like the chai wala, or people would come for one day, and they would treat them like crap, and they would say, हाँ ये left hand में लेके जाओ. तो Chaipa would say, मैं तो right hand में entry किया, दूसरा picture में हमें entry किया right hand में, तो left hand में क्यों लेके जाने का? And he would tell him, and then they would train the day players basically. So that way it wasn't a problem to throw them in, because they were ready for it. It was simply like a financial issue and that issue. So we spent the money in doing it right. We blew the whole 450 while shooting. And then the French, very cleverly, came in on the 6th week of shooting. They saw some of the rushes in Bombay with me, and they financed the balance with 33%. So I had to, I finished the film in France. All the post-production was in France, and we had a fat per diem that we had to spend every day, so I became bigger and bigger and bigger on croissants and all the fantastic bloody French food. So I rolled into Cannes. It's huge, and with Salaam Bombay. Poor and huge. Yeah. So
part of your crew was also, people who worked regularly on Bombay films. What was their response? How did they react to what they were doing or were asked to do?
Actually, the behind-the-scenes crew, you mean? Well, they were, I work like everyone who works with me. It really becomes a family, and I don't make a distinction between the grip and the gaffer and the guy who carries the light and the star. And so when we were talking and training and doing all this, everyone gets involved, really gets involved, and understands the ethos of the film. So that the grips and the gaffers, they were extraordinary, because this is the life everyone generally leads. So, like for instance, a day would come when the carpenter would say, Mira Didi, ye हमने देखा था ये these two singers on the train, वहाँ एक का नाक नहीं है, एक का कान नहीं है, एक का आँख नहीं है, and will you hear them singing? And they were fantastic singers, and I would put them in the film. So it was a very interactive type of unit, So they were also very much in the know that this was not your usual at all Bollywood film. Sometimes, though, they would let the cat out of the bag, because we were also known in India. We had a major kissing scene. I think it was the first huge sort of kissing scene. It was between Nana and Anita, and someone naturally told someone about it, and then it was a I hate those coquettish scenes where एक glass पे चुम्मी डालो and then दूसरे glass पे चुम्मी डालेगा. Or the Glaxo baby, or those, you cut to the baby, the white baby, always in the calendar. That's how love scenes were done then. And there was a Glaxo baby. Yeah, I think he was there. So we were not into the Glaxo baby. It was a full-on kiss. And I think the crew was a little bit, oh my God, what is happening here? And that was leaked. And so that one day we came back to the railway station to shoot, it was in all the tabloids, first kiss at that time the movie, the working title was called Chal Bombay Chal. So at least they didn't have Salaam Bombay on it, so that, we could keep going. But we had things like that.
So they were, about film which had drug addicts and child labor and prostitution, and the most controversial part was what? The kiss.
The kiss.
Nothing else.
Yeah, well, for that moment. They forgot about it a week later, but it was a big deal at the time, yeah.
And there's I've seen the film many times since, And some of my favorite bits are the little musical moments, whether it's Mira Naam Chin Chin Choo playing on the radio, or they're watching Mr. India in the cinema, and Hawa Hawaii and Sri Devi. And then the kids, they have these little bits where they're singing songs, but in slightly less innocent context. If I may quote, मेरे सपनों की रंडी कब आएगी हरी कब से मेरी झंडी कब आएगी.
Well, my brother Vicky is responsible for Meri Sapno Ki Randi. Yeah, and he's right here releasing his first book, Gone with the Vindaloo. It all is lots of stuff like that in Gone with the Vindaloo. And yeah, so I'm also very nourished by my body family, and they have a lot of lines in Monsoon Wedding as well. So yeah, but that's the joy of working in Gana Bajana, because we do take these lines and we do what we like with them, and yeah, so and I loved using that. I also, everything is sort of imbued with something personal, and living in Orissa, we lived in a small town in Bhubaneswar and Rourkela and all, and the radio was a big deal, and so the request, Jaipur se Raghuveer Singh ne pucha hai, they used to have these wonderful all India radio type of, Bulbulaiyan se, this kind of, and you would hope कि boyfriend ने कुछ request किया तेरे लिए kind of thing. So I love that whole requesting culture, and all the, if you see the movie again, all the requests for these songs, like Radio Jab Chalti Hai, it's all full of people that are friends, like a lot of my friends are all featured in those request things. So I think the joy of making at least my kind of cinema, or cinema for me, is to imbue it with everything that makes some sense to me, or some love for me, love of what I love, I mean. So music is constantly that passion.
At one point, Chilam even sings Pistol Packing Mama.
Yes. That is actually a true, truth is far stranger and more powerful than fiction. And Pistol Packing Mama is actually a song that the kids somehow, not our kids only, but street kids in Bombay in that time used to sing. Of course, they don't have the rhythm, they don't have the tune of Pistol Packing Mama, the real song, but it's a fantastic desi-fied tune. Pistol Packing Mama, lay your pistol down. It's like nothing to do with Pistol Packing Mama, but it's great. And You Are My Sunshine is the same thing. Is that there are these two songs that are big hits with street kids for some reason.
And there must be so many interesting stories from when you were making the film, because it was sort of guerrilla style, wasn't it? Because you were shooting on location, you did not use any studio sets.
Yeah.
I remember watching the film and I had your commentary on, and you were talking about this sequence in which Chai Pao has to run through the rain, and how you managed to capture that shot from the balcony of a brothel.
Yeah. Well, we didn't have money for rain machines, so but we had always, actually it's not quite guerrilla style, because it's almost more organized than a guerrilla filmmaking, because we have to, because there's no money. So we had always option A and option B, plan A and plan B. And plan A was the scene where we were shooting, and plan B was, if it rains, then we have to go, and we had already cased out Kamatipura was the red light area, and we'd already cased out this brothel from one window where you get the biggest, widest shot of rain as he goes in the rain with his tea crate. And we were shooting in another brothel, and it started to pour, and we went right into plan B, which was that brothel, and we put Chai Pao down below, and he had to run in the rain with his tea crate. But when we went to that brothel, there was I think a sheikh type of guy who was being serviced by two different women, but the madam knew me very well, because I was practically living in the area, and I had to go to meet the union of madams before we started the movie, and they were so supportive, because A, of India Cabaret, they loved that film, but B, because I was a woman, they said, "Haan ji, aap to hamari hain," and they supported. They recognized me, and so I had a deal with her already, but of course the timing was such that the guy was being, serviced. So, but she knew that it was loyalty, and we gave her, it was already set up. So she took two threadbare chadars, and she put them between like the 6 pairs of legs. I swear to God. And Sandy Sissel, this very small woman, was the cinematographer, and I gave her the 35 camera like over the 3 pairs of legs. And Sandy went to the window, and I stood behind, shake was going strong. And then I said on the walkie-talkie, action, and there downstairs was Chai Pao, far away, and he ran through it, and it's fantastic. I'll never forget, actually, not to name drop, but Steven Spielberg saw this movie when it was nominated for an Oscar, and he said to me, what's the budget of this movie, 15 million? And I said, no. He said, because like you had about 2 million in that climax scene, that was the Ganpati scene, and the rain, and he was, clocking numbers all the way. But of course we had not even 1 million. And but this was how it was done. So it was actually extremely organized. It was all sussed, so if it rained, we went there. If it didn't rain, we went there. But it was guerrilla in the sense that there were 52 locations. At the end of the film, if you see it, it says 52 locations, 52 days. What problem? No problem. Which was our slogan. No guts, no glory, 52 locations, 52 days. These were our mantras to keep us going. But those 52 locations, sometimes we didn't know where they were. So we would have to literally run from one to another to hope that street works, kind of thing. And those were the days without cell phones and without any of that. And in the middle of this, the bloody government would say कि हाँ जी अगले हफ्ते का कोटा ये बिस्लरी वाटर का receipt नहीं है तो आप जरा आइए तब हम चेक देंगे for the next day of shooting. And I said ठीक है, I would send my assistant, नहीं जी आप आइए.
Sounds familiar.
And I would go there. I swear this is not even an exaggeration. I would go to National Film Development Corporation of India. Please, I hope somebody is recording this. And I would sit while my set is there, going. I would sit next to Kumar Shahani and Mani Kaul, who are great, great cinema directors of India. And they were as morose as I was. The three of us were being made to sit like that until the guy called us. And he was just a masochist or sadist or whatever. And then I had to present the Bisleri receipt for the next day of shooting. I kid you not. And it's appalling, and I've made many comments about this. But now it has changed a lot, really a lot. But then it was like that, and they really got you in that level.
So the point where I remember reading that for the final shot of the film, you're running out of film stock. And you only had like 1 or 2 chances to get it.
Yeah, I mean, film stock even now is expensive, but then was prohibitive. And it was a very long take of Chai Pao. He's murdered a man. He's no longer going to be a boy. And he's lost the surrogate mother he had in this crowd. And he comes down this long passageway, and he sits down in a veranda, in a kind of porch. And the only thing he has is the spinning top that he came to the city with in the beginning. And in fact, he was supposed to spin the top, he was supposed to thread the top and then spin it, but I chose to cut the spinning in case it didn't spin, and then I'd lose all that footage, right? So in any case, he was really emotional in the scene, and he had to just, thread the top. But, and I wish we had the film to show you, but it was a very terribly hard scene to do because it's about 3 minutes long, 4 minutes long. He has to sit, and I was talking him through it. Like I would say, I would talk to him through it, and he was doing it amazingly. And as he starts to thread the top, he starts to cry because I was sort of talking to him about it, and our camera is going in to him closer and closer, and that's the end of the film. Then he has to look up at the camera and look at you in the camera, and then he has to stop crying. So that's a very detailed thing to do, and we had it. We were doing it, and it was excellent, and we were moving in, and then some, excuse me, asshole above, he just dropped a huge pot of flowers right in the middle of the shot that crashed on Chai Pao's feet. I mean, just to bug around, and it was just amazing. And the other interesting thing that you learn is how to conserve your energy as a director, which I didn't know because my first film. But I knew that if I started yelling and screaming and, what the hell, it didn't work, because you have to sustain the moment. And then we had literally 1 take left, and then he had to do it again. And we, of course, got somebody on the guy, but we did it, and it happened, you know. So this was the extraordinary thing that happened because of the children. The children's work and the power and the fact that they kind of knew that they were making the story of their own life was very powerful. And for me and for Suni, the writer, it was really important that the film play for them. It was not a film designed for the Oscars or for Cannes or for this or that. It was designed for a cinema called Liberty Cinema in Bombay, where the kids, with every rupee they had, would go. And we wanted to play in Liberty. That was the dream. And no one wanted this movie. You know, anyway, we finished the movie in France and we went to Cannes 2 days later. And it was a kind of, actually a sort of fairy tale. I mean, I remember, it was the last night of the Cannes Film Festival, and they really, anyway, and it was like a 30-minute ovation. I didn't know what to do, you know, I was actually, just didn't know what to do. And I had no PR budget, I had no brochure, I had other friends in Cannes who had buttons like this that proclaimed their film, and I would take their buttons and put Salaam Bombay with sellotape on the buttons and wear them, and, you know, things like that. And then I was renting a room in an old lady's home because I didn't have money for a hotel, and I was living in her corridor, and there was a landline, and that was the line I gave in the catalog for the sales of the film, and that phone just rang from, you know, midnight to 6 a.m. and we literally had sold the whole world in that corridor. The real response to the film. But I had no idea. But what I wanted, I was saying, was Liberty Cinema. And we won we sold everything, we did all these awards, everything. Luckily, we won the Camera d'Or, which came with $50,000, which was my last debts were paid with that money. And then when I came back to India to sell it, the distributors still didn't want it, and we had, you know, I went to so many people, and then finally a young man started, you know, Pankaj Mehta. He started his business with Salaam Bombay, and it ran for 27 weeks in Liberty and Eros. You know, in those days it was called Silver Jubilee after 25 weeks, and these were 1,500 seaters. These were not cineplexes and multiplexes. This was like, you know, taking on the Amitabh sort of scene, and we had a big Silver Jubilee party, and they gave little Ganpatis to everyone, no guts, no glory, and so that was the best part of it. Is that you know, the kids and kids like them really loved this film.
I think one of my favorite sequences from the film is it was again a kind of a long take and single shot, I believe, in which the little girl Manju, she's given this packet of biscuits by Chai Pao to give to his crush 16 Saal, but she does not in fact deliver the biscuits.
Yeah, she was my favorite Hansa. Now she has 4 children, and she misunderstood my direction to her. The direction, it's a long take, as you see, and the direction was you come in and you eat 2 biscuits and then you throw it away and then you go back. But she misheard me and she ate the whole pack, in the whole pack, like 12 biscuits, glucose biscuits, and she was like gagging on the biscuits, and it was just so amazing to see her like gagging. And I told her one thing. I said, "Tu kha jaise tu 16 saal ko kha rahi hai." And she was doing that. She was gagging, and that's the take. There's only one take, and she really eats it with that vengeance, and also that kind of and then as soon as I said cut, she looked at me and said, "Abhi take 2 nahi kehne ka, didi, nahi karne ka." So they were just wonderful. I mean, all the kids came on the 21st anniversary of the movie. The India International Film Festival had this retrospective, and they had this thing, and all from Nana to everyone came, and all the children came with their children. And we've lost 3 children to one to HIV, one to an accident, and one to an ill health. But otherwise, all the kids are with us, and I mean in their lives, and because of the trust, they know we are very much in touch, you know. But yeah.
And there's a lovely story of the character called Kira,
Yeah.
What happened to him?
Well, Kira was is Raju Bernard, who was, you see, these kids are undernourished. So even Chai Pao, he plays 11-year-old boy in the movie, but he was 15 and he was a hardcore street kid. He had left home when he was 9 and he was not going to go back in a hurry, although now he is definitely back with his family. But Kira was the only little one, you know, and that's more malleable, that's more, you can impact a life in a different way. And Sandy Sissel, the cinematographer, adopted Raju and took him back to Santa Monica, where he became the boogie board champion of Santa Monica, for better or for worse, when he was about 15. And then she was an amazing mother, and he had his mother, who was an alcoholic woman who lived in Bombay, and Sandy would bring him home to see his real biological family every year. And so he has a very beautifully interesting life. And now he works at Panavision Cameras, and he's married to a Chinese American woman, and he has a beautiful daughter called Maya, and he's part of our lives. Yeah, he has really changed his life in a very direct way, dramatic way. Yeah.
One of the smaller characters that I thought really interesting on screen was the one played by Shaukat Azmi, the Madame of the brothel. And I eavesdropped on a conversation you had with my mother about how she was transformed into the Madame, including having her bra kind of rubbed in the dirt.
Well, Shaukat Appa, I loved her work for a long time on the theatre. He was part of IPTA, and I loved her work, and I think she was at Umrao Jan as well, but that happened after, yeah. And I asked her, and she just, wanted to play this part and was completely game. And essentially, I pick her up from her home in Juhu, and we would go to Kamatipura, and she would be dressed by the madams. There was no hair and makeup person. They were the hair and makeup people. And they would dress her every single day. And she was such an actress, the way she puts her pan right into her bra, and then she takes it out, and then she puts it right there, and she's just so tactile, and she's so unafraid and so unvain, And she just was amazing, and they loved her. And they would look her up and down they would look her up and down, and they'd say, they would sort of give her 10 out of 10 before they would let her come to the camera, And Kaifi Saab would come and pick her up, and he would get a little embarrassed, Kothe wali kaun aa rahi hai mere ghar, And then all the madams would come and they would tease him, and bahut maza aata tha, that kind of thing. And then he would kind of relax, but she would love it, And she's an amazing actor, and she loves this film. And even on the 25th, on this big, we reprinted it. We have a beautiful new print, and we had this big release in India. And Shaukat Appa came in the wheelchair, and beautiful juttis, beautiful sari, but full in wheelchair, and she's sat the whole movie. She's an amazing lady, yeah.
And one character I personally could never forget was Sola Saal herself, because she's there throughout the film, and I think she is a pivotal character, but you never hear her. The only dialogue she has in the entire film is, "I want to die."
Mujhe marna hai. Well, she was a girl I saw on the street, and her family just said okay, and she, I don't know what, that's the one person I don't know where she went, And there was this long, big thing happening there with Nepalese girls being trafficked. There still is, And she was kind of Nepalese, half Nepalese, and she was so rosebud, and she did a great work, And again, we mirrored in life, in the training, very much the story. So I kept her away from Baba for Nana Patekar, and then Nana would charm her or something, and then there was one kiss in between them when he takes her to the photo shop for a photo studio, and she didn't know what, and it was just a peck, it was just a little thing, but and again and he surprises her with it, and that's the take in the film. The interesting thing about Salaam Bombay is we probably never did more than 2 takes, because we never had the stock, So it felt, while I was shooting it, a little threadbare, like I hope I have it, you know. But in the editing, which was done brilliantly, the editing was extraordinarily done by my dear friend Barry Brown, who after that cut all of Spike Lee's movies and many of my movies. The editing is so skillful that it makes it look like we had all this stuff, you know. So there was only one take she allowed me, Sola Sal, of that peck on the cheek, and it's the take that's in the film, you know. So it was like that, you know, how to make every challenge an opportunity, and also how to not ever apologize for, you know, to show something that feels as full as it needs to be.
And the character also humanizes Baba, because at points you want to hate him, but he's not a villain.
Well, he's not, and I think it's very limiting to make characters that you hate, because all of us we have things in us that we must hate and should hate, you know, and how to make that balance is really the key, I think, to making any character work in the movies or in life or in writing or whatever, you know, because there is no such thing. I really believe that there is no such thing as black or white, you know. It is always that seesaw that is interesting. And that is in all of us. So if I don't make a character that you can see yourself in, then you can just dismiss that character and you will be impervious to that character. You know, he will not affect you. And the whole key is you have to. So when Chilam dies and the kids come to Baba to donate for the, you know, for the carrying him, you know, how he gives some money and then he hesitates and then he takes everything he has and he gives it to them. Small details like that are very important, you know, in terms of revealing a person's character and a person's pain and a person's dimensionality.
And speaking about that scene where Chilam's body is carried through the streets, how did you come to shoot that? And I believe there was something interesting that happened at the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, like many things, we did a lot with hidden camera. So we had already cased a camera viewpoint from a building that where this wonderful street would circle around. You know, Bombay is a very amazing place architecturally, but we had to case it all out beforehand. It was not kind of, and so we had Chilam on the stretcher. It was a very simple thing with the kids, and we just set them off on the street, and we went above, and it's beautiful when actually, like here, I'm sure anyone a dead body passes, everyone plays salams or, you know, respects in some way, you know. And so we got all that within a big bustling street because people would naturally do that. And then when we got down with our camera, when they were lowering the stretcher, this old lady was doing duas for the body, and these kids are fantastic. They lit a cigarette because Chilam used to smoke by then, and they put a cigarette in the dead body's mouth, and Raghuveer came up like puffing the cigarette, and the old lady, you know, we had to wonder if she would next be on that stretcher because she was like, what is going on? So it was, you know, we always had fun like that because you had to. It was too hard otherwise, and the kids are full of mischief and fantastic humor. Yeah.
And there was this really nice dialogue. I don't know whether it was improvised or not, but when Chaipo is taken by the police and he's in this van, this old man says to him, "Ek din Hindustan mein sab kuch theek ho jayega."
It is a line that we say. No, it's not improvised. It's a very thought-through line that Suni and I say to each other when the going gets tough, even up to this day. If like her kid is applying for college and she's wondering, and I said, "Ek din Hindustan mein sab kuch theek ho jayega." It's sort of our line now, but it's a beautiful line, and that guy also says it really, beautifully. But yeah, that's then that's the sort of third act of the film where he's taken into the remand home and he doesn't know whether he's ever going to get out, and then of course he gets out.
Inside.
Yeah, I mean that was the beauty of having the Bisleri water receipt from the government, because these are all government institutions and they are amazing. Once you have the government chap, then they open up these courts and this and that and things that you'd never get access to. So we shot in the real chiller room. We shot, everything was real because we had that access. And that was really a huge gift actually, because you can't imagine the halat of these these chiller rooms, you know, and it's in the movie. And everything, and the kids in the chiller room showed us how they try to escape from the chiller room. So the escape scene is actually what they do, or don't do, or lose heart doing, because it's quite tough. You know, you have to walk, and you have to leap across things, and then you have to hope that the garbage truck actually comes that day, and then you have to jump into garbage. But you know, this was what was such an amazing treasure of Salaam Bombay, of this kind of, you know, cinema verite, fiction filmmaking, is that you get the truth from the people who live it, and you immerse yourself in that and try to recreate it. So, you know, in that sense, we had never really studied, you know, fiction and action scene and shot breakdown and where to put the camera. All that I learned by doing, you know. And also, like Sandy, who shot it, she had done many commercials and not even a feature film, but she knew how to light. So, you know, that was the way we could make this film, because everyone was paid really very little, but they had some proficiency. It wasn't like I was going to, you know, but it was very difficult to do, because sometimes, like I remember the Chin Chin Choo scene, which is a scene about real joy and abandon, and you got that scene, for some reason, took about 8 hours to light, you know, and by the time she was finished lighting, the children were dead asleep on the floor. Everyone was wiped out, and I knew that we had to do the scene because the next day we lost that location. And so to get these children up at like 4 a.m. and pretend it's afternoon, and all of us to get up, and then to have them dancing, and then to have that sort of joie de vivre in the film, and to achieve it is really tough, you know. And but they were so incredible, and they were really with us all the way. But that scene was done at 4 in the morning, you know, day for night. Like it was really amazing. So those were I started the film with black hair, and I ended the film with 70% white hair. And I have a testimony to very good hair color since then, because I swear to God, I went white making that film. Yeah, and I didn't know when the film ended shooting, I didn't know like what normal life was. It took me a long time to like go out to dinner or have a friend over or something like that. You know, it was really an immersion into a space where I wonder if I could do that again, you know. But it's the sort of thing, and I'd love to speak to the young folks here, because it's the sort of thing you must do when you're beginning. You know, they say you take your greatest risks in the beginning or at the end, and I didn't even know what risks, like I didn't even know it was a risk, you know. I didn't even know about it. I had never been to a feature film festival. I didn't know feature films. So it was a very hard to make, but an extraordinary journey after it was made.
There were so many people who were first-timers on this film, and I have to talk about the music by S. Subramaniam, because it's such a fantastic score, if you can just talk about that.
Well, sure. I mean, L. Subramaniam is a legendary classical violinist and South Indian violinist, Carnatic violin, and we wrote the screenplay in a friend's house in Manori to his Rag Kirwani, this particular rag, and we would play it again and again, and we wrote the screenplay to this music. And he was a classical violinist. He'd never done a movie, and I found him in Los Angeles. He lived there, and I flew there and I talked him into making a movie. He'd never done that. He's a lovely fellow, and he saw the film and he said, okay, I'll try. And he, you know, it was like showing them, it was the old-fashioned way. You show the movie in a studio and he has the violin and he'll play to the melody of that. And there was a lot of his found music, 2-3 long pieces that I already loved, that I used as is. And then he had to invent the music, I mean, as musicians do, right through. And it was such a beautiful collaboration that he did the music for my second film, Mississippi Masala, after that. And after that, he's been calling me ever since, Mira, when are you calling me again? But you know, he has a very specific sound, a very haunting kind of, you know, sound, and other movies have not, I think, needed that sound as much. So that's how we did the music. And again, the first time, you know, for him, the first time. Yeah.
And I think for me, the film, and I think possibly this is true of a lot of your films, the ones that I've been watching over the years, it is a film about outsiders in so many ways. I mean, particularly the character of Chai Pao, but the other characters as well. We don't know where they come from, how they got here, or where they're going. And you mentioned Mississippi Masala. Even in that, your main characters are really outsiders. Is it something you're particularly drawn to?
I am drawn to outsiders. I've always questioned, who defines what is truth, what is respectability, what is propriety, who is an insider. I've always questioned that line, and I always get inspired, I find, by people who are considered marginal. Like even the strippers in India Cabaret. They are not considered obviously respectable, and one of them yearned for respectability. And the film India Cabaret is about this male customer who comes often to see them, and then we convinced him to let me go home with him, and it becomes about his wife, and the wife who has respectability but really no freedom, and the woman who has no respectability but in a sense freedom. And the film asks that question, who is the more free or the less free. So I'm attracted to that idea of questioning who defines, what is right and wrong. And always the people who are considered out, or are the ones who I find the most interesting, because they usually have no pity about their lives. No, they usually are the ones who are carving their own way. And that always inspires me. And especially with the kids, because they have flamboyance with it. They don't have any sense of feel sorry for me, And it's a very moving thing when you encounter that from a place of privilege, when you see someone who has nothing, who still acts like he has the world. It's a very moving thing. So, the so-called outsiders I am drawn to. And I guess I am sort of, in the seesaw myself. Yeah.
And now in the aftermath of the film, I have to ask, somehow friends of mine have asked this question as if, I have regular contact with Mira Nair, so please ask her this question, and I really don't. But now that she's here, didn't Bollywood come calling? Didn't they ask her to make a film?
No, Bollywood didn't come calling. Did Bollywood come calling? I don't think they did. Who came calling was every conceivable film about kids of every conceivable color. So Hollywood came calling, actually, with a film called Sarafina about South African kids in a township, and various kids' stories came calling. But that's death, I mean, I don't want to do that again. And I had very much an idea, which is Mississippi Masala, in my head as a second thing. So I mean, I didn't know much about a path I was going to take by then, but what I knew, for instance, I had many agents come calling, very powerful Hollywood types came calling, and I didn't actually know what agents did. I didn't even know what an assistant director did, in that sense. So because I wasn't ever thinking that I am putting myself in the market for a job. I always thought of myself as someone who would make their own work, rather than hope for an offer from here or there. And that's pretty much what I've done. But Bollywood expressly did not come calling. There was, I think, some admiration and some respect and some kind of envy as well, because it was the first Indian film to be shown all around the world. It was a commercial hit as well. It also, it got the Oscar, it didn't get the Oscar, but it got nominated, and all of those glam things that everyone likes. But they were baffled. Okay, how did you think of this? And I remember many Indian directors, friends of mine, would come and say, "यार मेरा वो international film मुझे भी करनी है. मेरे को एक role है, Michael Caine लगा देंगे उसमें, Sean Connery लगा देंगे तो ठीक चलेगा." And I would say to them, it's completely wrong-headed. It wouldn't be, it's not about that, and it's actually what's right in front of you and you don't see. So I think that's one of the interesting things about living between two places, as I do, is that things that you are numbed by in your own environment, you have a different eye on when you return, and that's what happened with me and the street kids.
Satyajit Ray apparently saw it, and he said it's the most moving film I've seen.
Yeah. I mean, he was, of course, a great man, and I had this theory about the people I admire that I would only meet them when I have something to offer them. I met Satyajit Ray once when he came to Boston and asked him several times to let me assist him, and he wrote me these beautiful handwritten letters which I have about schedules and this and that. So this assisting didn't happen, but the minute I made my first documentary in 1983 called So Far from India, I went to see him. I used to see him every summer on our way back, from my way back to Orissa where my family lived. It was via Calcutta, and with So Far from India, I remember taking the 16mm document projector and the film and showing it to him in his veranda, and that's another story. But so I kept a relationship with him, which was very, very nice. I would see him once in 2 years, and he would ask me for all the gossip of the world, and I would tell him, and we would discuss stuff, which was really amazing accessibility he had. And then I made the film, and by that time he was very not well, but he agreed to. The first premiere of Salaam Bombay was in Kamatipura, which is the red light area, where all the people came and we gave them each a red rose, all the prostitutes and all the madams and all the children, and it was an amazing screening in a place called Alexandria Cinema, and they raised their red roses. But the national premiere was in Nandan Theatre in Calcutta, where Satyajit Ray came in his wheelchair and opened the film, and I was just so nervous. I was in the back. I left the theater. I just didn't know what would happen and what he would do. And he said, and he wrote it. Then it became the poster for the Academy Award campaign. He said he could not ever recall being moved by a first feature that had control over every aspect of cinema, and it was amazing what he wrote. And so he was being very kind to me.
That it's 6 and the session has to end. Thank you.
Let's just take 2 questions.
Can we take 2 questions? Just quick questions.
I'm sure there are young filmmakers here.
Worded very briefly, please. No? If anybody wants to ask.
Yes.
Are you still working with the 35mm format, or you have moved to this digital new camera?
I have made many films, most of my films in 35, but the last film, The Reluctant Fundamentalist, was made digitally with the Alexa camera, but made by Declan Quinn, who is the same cinematographer as most of my films, and it was filmed and lit in a way that I hope looked like 35, because we all love the luminosity of 35, but digitally it just makes it much easier on the budget and on mobility and on so many things. You can shoot more. So I think, unfortunately, the way of the world is going more digital. So, and budgets just don't allow anymore the post-production to be in 35. But inshallah, one day I'll do 35 again, but I am working in digital increasingly.
But you're happy with this?
Yeah, if you have the right cinematographer who can compensate for the coldness of digital, then I think it can be an exciting medium. And you have to embrace it, because it's not so easy otherwise. Yeah. Yes?
There's this quality of cinema verite in your work. Before cinema verite became Okulo, so Salaam Bombay, and then the camera work in Monsoon Wedding is also sort of this cinema verite, it's got this flavor.
Yeah.
Is that because you come from a documentary filmmaking background, or do you feel that the relationship of reality to fiction is sort of, are you making sort of is it a commentary on the relationship between fiction and reality?
Well, I think a lot is because I come from the cinema verite background, which is cinema of truth. And I really genuinely believe that truth is really more powerful than fiction. But of course, the fiction form can make you come back to embrace that kind of inexplicability of what happens in everyday life in a constructed way without appearing it to look constructed, which was exactly how we thought of Monsoon Wedding. Again, it was a budget thing, wanting it to be a budget. That was an experiment, how to make a movie in $1 million after you've made bigger movies. Can you go back to that? And it was made only with a handheld camera, and it was made so that all the actors were never acting. They were always had to be in it because they didn't know when the camera would come to them. So, but it's not exactly only using the camera for documentary kind of truth making. It's heightening that truth, obviously, and heightening that truth with, I hope, a kind of aesthetic and a sensuality that I'm attracted to, pumping it, like really heightening it. So Monsoon Wedding was a combination of that kind of seemingly casual camera, but with real punch. But always, the idea is not to repeat myself, and they also to always go to the abyss, or what I call the abyss, shouldn't be the abyss, but to the risk factor, where adrenaline of risk, where you don't know, ke chalega, ke nahi chalega, will it work, that type of thing. But it is about that marriage of what seem like a seemingly fly on the wall, but actually it's all constructed. And actors of that nature can really help you take it further, whether it's Nair or whether it's Shefali Chaya or these kinds of amazing performers that I've had blessed to work with, whether Uma Thurman or Reese Witherspoon or all of them. They're stars for a reason. Some of them become stars, but some of them are stars without being stars. And if you can get that, that's the important thing, is how to, my favorite word on a set is how to maximize. Let's max it. Because if you're just, scratching the surface, it never does it. You have to go for it. Should we obey them?
We have to end up, we're thrown out with a chart. Okay.
Let us throw them.
A little bit more about your upcoming project or what you're working on currently.
I am actually working on a Broadway stage musical of Monsoon Wedding. We start rehearsal in June 3rd in New York City, and it's an entirely different form to make a play, and it's music by Vishal Bhardwaj. He has 7 songs by Vishal and 4 songs with Michael Dana, who did the music of the film, and Sabrina Dhawan, who wrote the screenplay, has written the book play, and we have outrageous people, Bill T. Jones choreographing. It's a very interesting, and I'm going to direct it, and they can't fire me because I'm the producer as well. But I am. It's a new thing, and then I'm making 2 films that should I go quickly? I'm making a film for Bengali detective in Calcutta. Another true story of a pot-bellied everyman who has a private investigating company and who wants to clean up India of corruption and so on, but whose secret desire, and he does it, is Bollywood dancing. And I've cast Govinda in that film. So wish me luck. And I have another movie in East Africa where I also live, but I won't bore you with that. Mira is like, huh?
How many more businesses do you have?
I have made The Reluctant Fundamentalist. I've spent 5 years on this labor of great love, and I heard the release here was dodgy, so I don't know if all of you have seen it, but please see it. And it's been, but I am in love with Lahore, and I really love to be here. So please, every one of you, keep inviting me to come back. And chai pani ho jaye.
Please remain seated. Please remain seated and wait for the hall to get cleared. Please, thank you.